Hello gardener, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm harvesting sweet potatoes out of all of my grow bags, so I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to teach you all when to harvest sweet potatoes, how to take cuttings for propagation, and cure them to develop a better flavor and make them last longer in storage. If you're new here, hello, my name is Jara and I teach others how to garden and grow food with a little bit of beekeeping and raising backyard chickens thrown in. This video is one of many garden guides that can be found on my channel, where I share my knowledge about growing food and other edible plants. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my garden tutorials. All right, let's harvest these sweet potatoes. I have grown sweet potatoes both in ground and in grow bags, and it's pretty much the same, except harvesting is way easier when grown in grow bags or other containers. So that is why my favorite way to grow them is in grow bags or containers. Some people like digging out tubers out of the ground, but I don't. That's a lot of hard work, and it's annoying when your shovel breaks into one of the tubers. If the tuber breaks, then it will spoil soon, so you have to use it up immediately. Plus, it makes it hard to follow the tubers under the ground when they are just breaking apart. To solve all of that, I started growing them in grow bags so I can just flip the whole thing over and harvest them all out at once. If you're in a subtropical or tropical climate and you miss one tuber in the ground, it will continue to sprout and spread all over the place. Trust me, I have sweet potato vines popping up out of the ground after a planting I did more than 2 years ago because I didn't locate all of the tubers. For a small garden like mine, that's not good. Growing in grow bags ensures I find every single tuber. I planted about 3 slips per 20-gallon grow bag like way back in June, and now it's January. I'm expecting some very cold weather in the next few days, and I'm sure it's going to cause a lot of cold damage to the vines, so I wanted to harvest everything out and take cuttings. It doesn't get cold enough here in Florida to kill the tubers in the ground, but it will damage the leaves and vines, which I need for next season's propagation material. I've already begun taking cuttings, so that's why these plants don't look very good. They look pretty bare right now. And then I was like, wait, I should hurry up and do a video about this. But originally they were very lush and green. The vines were super long, hitting like 15 or 20 feet long. Before I continue harvesting, I want to show you guys how to propagate sweet potatoes from cuttings. If you have an existing plant in the garden, or maybe your garden friend does, taking cuttings from existing plants is the absolute fastest way to grow more slips. Rooted cuttings of sweet potato vines are called slips, and they are ready to be transplanted. Take your cuttings and place them in a jar of water, and in about 2 to 3 weeks, they should be fully rooted and ready to be transplanted. If it is nice and warm outside, you can plant them once they have the roots. However, I like to wait until all danger of frost is past and the soil is warm, which is right around April for me. Right now it's January. Since it's too cold to plant sweet potato slips outdoors, I'm going to take the slips and plant them individually in about 4-inch size pots with some soil, keep them warm, give them some extra light, and by the time April arrives, they will be pretty established transplants. If they outgrow the 4-inch size pot, then I would pot them up in a 6-inch pot or 1-gallon container. So this is how you can propagate sweet potatoes over the winter so they're ready for transplanting in spring. All right, so let's get to harvesting these sweet potatoes. The very first thing I'm going to do is put down a tarp or a piece of plastic sheeting like this right here. I get these really cheap from Amazon or even Harbor Freight. That way I can dump everything on here and reuse the soil. All right, so let me show you how to take some cuttings off from existing vines. The first thing you want to do is locate the end of one of the vines, and then you're just going to eyeball it. I like to cut my cuttings at around 5 to 8 inches long with at least 3 leaf nodes in there. This is the tip of the vine right here, and if you count 3 nodes, that's 1, 2, 3. It's a little bit short than what I would like, so I'm just going to extend it down to about right here. This is a leaf right here. It's kind of a long stem for a leaf, but this is where the leaf comes out right from the vine. That's the node right there. Sometimes you can even see a little sprout in the middle there of where the next leaf or vine is going to start growing out of. But that's where roots will also grow out of if you put this in water or in some soil. So we're going to cut with some scissors just underneath, maybe leaving at least 1/2 inch of space between the leaf node and that cut, and make your cut at a 45-degree angle. After you take your cutting, you're going to want to remove all of the leaves, except for maybe the very top 1 or 2 leaves if the vine has some there, but just cut the rest of them off. That way this stem piece can focus its energy on sprouting new roots instead of maintaining those leaves. All right, so this is a perfect cutting that I'm going to put in a jar of water to root it, so that way it'll grow its own new root system, and then it's a perfectly ready to transplant sweet potato slip. Okay, so on to the fun part, harvesting these potatoes. General guidelines say that sweet potatoes are ready in about 90 to 120 days from planting, but if you wait longer, the tubers will be much bigger. If you have a short warm season, then you might not have any any choice but to harvest them at around 90 to 120 days. If you're in a hot climate like me, you can leave them in the ground much longer. These have been growing in here for at least 6 months and they are massive. I would rather wait to harvest nice big tubers and cure them all than go through the whole process for just a few small tubers. I really like to grow them in something around 20 gallons or maybe even a little bit smaller, because I find that if I try to grow them in something bigger than 20 gallons with the soil and everything, it's just kind of too heavy for me to move around and dump on myself. So I find that 20 gallons maximum is really good. Oh my gosh, this one is massive. It doesn't even look like a sweet potato. It looks like a jicama or something. Oh my gosh, this is insane. I was not expecting this. This is by far a really, really huge sweet potato. It almost looks like a butternut squash. So this particular variety is called Tainung number 64. It's a pretty uncommon, hard to find cultivar that comes from Taiwan. But this one by far is my absolute favorite one for your standard orange colored flesh and skin sweet potato, because the stems are thick, the plants are vigorous, they consistently produce really big tubers. I mean, this one is probably one of the biggest ones I've got out of it without much inputs, because I barely fertilize this. I barely take care of them. I just put them in these grow bags, put them in a nice sunny spot, and kind of forget about them for 6 months. I have tried growing lots of other different varieties of sweet potatoes. You guys know I love to experiment with different cultivars and kind of learn the differences between them. And actually maybe 1 or 2 out of these 4 bags here are another cultivar called Beauregard. And that one is probably the most common sweet potato cultivar used commercially. So if you buy some at the grocery store, most likely it's the Beauregard variety, and it's a really, really good variety. But those tubers are always much smaller than what I get out of this Tainung number 64. They can get bigger if I'm kind of more on top of fertilizing them and different kinds of things to really help support the plants to get a nice big tuber size. But this Tainung number 64, I don't do anything, barely, and it still produces big tubers for me. I originally got my slips for Tainung number 64 from a local Florida nursery called Cody Cove Farms. So please, if you want to try growing this, go check out their website first. I'll put a link in the description below, and purchase it from them before you go over to my website to find some. I just want to give credit to where it's due. They put a lot of effort into researching unique cultivars that grow very well in hot climates. However, at the time of this video, they don't ship outside of the state of Florida, and sometimes it might be out of stock. So if that's the case, then go check out my website. Periodically, I do have some sweet potato slips for this Tainung number 64. All this from just 1 grow bag, and I still see a couple more tubers in there. And these look really good. Sometimes you dig out your sweet potatoes and they have cracks in them or like lots of little holes. That's usually an indication of some kind of pest that got into the soil, but man, these look really good. Perfect, actually. And a lot of people ask me, what kind of soil do I fill my grow bags with? And I use the same cheapest compost I can possibly find from Home Depot. I don't know the name of the brand, but it's a white and yellow colored bag. And that's what I use. Like if I just need real quick a little bit of soil to fill a couple grow bags or something like that, I'll just go to Home Depot and get a few bags of it. I've never had a problem with that compost brand burning my plants. That is an issue if you're buying compost that hasn't composted down long enough. So not all brands are equal. But I've been using that cheap yellow and white bagged compost from Home Depot for many years in grow bags, raised beds, you know, wherever. If I need a lot of soil to fill like a lot of bed space and stuff like that, then I'll buy in bulk and have it delivered. I did not mix anything else into that bag of compost. I just used straight compost to grow these sweet potatoes. And maybe that's why they did so well without much inputs or like fertilizer. And just so you know, a lot of people report to me that they're unable to find that yellow and white bag of compost at their local Home Depot or hardware stores. Only some of them carry it. Some people report to me they find it at Lowe's as well. So I don't know, maybe you'll get lucky and find it at your local hardware store. So again, I just want to stress that Beauregard is not a bad cultivar. It's just, it might require a little bit more care and attention than a variety like this to produce nice big tubers. In general, I never want to say that something is not a good variety. Like, you know, sometimes people make videos saying, I'll never grow these types of peppers ever again because they didn't do well in my garden. Well, just because something didn't grow well in your garden doesn't mean it won't grow well in the next person's garden, because every garden is unique. That's why you'll never see me put down any kind of a cultivar. All right, so let me finish up this harvest here. Some of these pieces have a lot of roots attached to them. This piece is pretty small. It's not really worth harvesting to eat. So I'm actually going to plant this whole thing into a grow bag, and it will start sprouting new vines and leaves and everything just from this piece. this. This one as well is kind of too small, so I'm just gonna put it right back. Ooh, look at this one. This is crazy. This looks like a jicama, not like a sweet potato. And each sweet potato cultivar is just a little bit different. Some get, you know, nice and long, oblong, like what you see in the grocery store. Some are more round. It just depends. They all taste great, and that's what matters. Here's another one that's kind of on the small side, so I'm just gonna replant it. And I think that's it. I think we got all those tubers out, which is great. I don't have to worry about this overtaking my entire garden. I have a lot of like root pieces left over here, so I'm gonna cut these stems off, and I'm gonna take all this root material and plant it again as well. Then obviously take any remaining like stems and vines and stuff like that out of this soil, especially if you're gonna reuse it in other parts of your garden. And I'm gonna continue to cut all of this up to make more slips. Here's another bag of the Tainung, number 64. Ooh, that's a big one right there, it just fell out. And when you do this, it's a good idea to kind of check the soil, make sure it's not, you know, infested with pests or something like that before you decide to reuse this in your garden. All right, this one is Beauregard, and I can already tell the difference. The skin color is a little bit more orangey than the Tainung. The Tainung is definitely like a lighter white cream color almost. But let's see what we have. And I think this one I planted in August, not June. I'm sure they're gonna be smaller since they've only been growing for about 5 months in here. These are kind of more on the small side, but this variety definitely has more of that typical grocery store sweet potato shape. All right, so all of these Beauregards are pretty small, definitely not like the Tainung. I'm not even gonna bother like curing this and all of that. I'm just gonna save this to replant. But I do wanna say I'm so happy with Tainung that I almost just wanna grow that one exclusively and not even bother with the rest of them. I mean, once you try that one, it's pretty hard to be happy with something like this. I'm sure they would be a lot bigger if I like fertilized and stuff like that. I have grown Beauregard before in like a raised bed and fertilized it and all of that, and they were much bigger than this. All right, this is the last bag. This is another Beauregard. Oh, we got a slightly bigger one here. It's a pretty decent sized one. I was so excited to hurry up and start harvesting everything that I kind of forgot to explain, how do you know that your sweet potatoes are ready for harvest? There's a couple indicators that will tell you, you know, you can begin harvesting, but really what I like to do is just track the time, like how much time has passed since I transplanted them. I like to wait 5 or 6 months. That's how you get nice big sized ones. So no matter what the plants look like, if they're flowering or not, whatever that might be, I just harvest them at around that 5 to 6 month mark. Some people say they're okay to start harvesting once they start flowering. To me, that's not a really accurate indicator. I mean, sometimes they just start flowering randomly. That doesn't mean that the tubers in their ground are nice and big size. And then other gardeners, especially if you're up north, say to harvest them once the leaves and stuff start dying back. That doesn't happen in warmer climates, okay? In Florida, they're like evergreen. They're never gonna die back on you. I'm zone 10A, and my winters can get as cold as around 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's not enough to like really cause significant dieback. The leaves definitely start looking yellow and funky, and the growth has significantly slowed down, but it doesn't really cause that dieback to really know, okay, it's time to harvest. If you're up north, you have no choice. You have to harvest them if they start dying back. But you know, in warmer zones and climates, I think the best thing to do is just wait 5 to 6 months after transplanting. Also, if you start to see a tuber poking out of the soil surface, that tends to be a pretty good indicator that there's a nice sized tuber in the ground. You can kind of move some of that soil away to kind of check it and gauge how big it is. And if it's as big as you want it to be or like it, go ahead and harvest everything. I also grow sweet potatoes on my second garden. It's on my aunt's property in St. Cloud, Florida. She has a couple acres over there. We grow this variety, and I have a couple more out there. And what we do is we plant them straight in the ground, no compost, nothing fancy, no fertilizer, nothing. We don't even water them. We plant them when our rainy season starts in June, so we don't have to worry about watering the slips really. And over there, we harvest them as needed. So they'll stay in the ground just a really long time. If we feel like we want to eat some sweet potatoes for dinner, she'll come out and like harvest them and eat them as is without even curing and all of that. There are so many different ways that you can grow sweet potatoes. Just find what works best for you. Now that we harvested everything, we need to cure them. Sweet potato tubers are rich in carbohydrates that don't taste very sweet as is. But if you cure them in a warm, humid, and dark place for 2 to 3 weeks, the carbohydrates get converted into sugars, making them taste much sweeter. Plus, the curing process helps dry out the outer skin, which protects the tuber better from going bad while in storage. Curing is optional, but it greatly enhances flavor. Some people eat sweet potatoes right after harvesting it, and it tastes okay, but it will be more bland and on the starchy side. It just won't be as sweet as it could be. For that reason, I like to cure mine. Do not wash these tubers until you're going to eat or cook with them. Gently just brush off that extra soil and cure them as is. Washing them will make the skin wet, so they won't cure properly and won't last as long in storage. The curing process is easy, and there are so many different and creative ways you can cure sweet potatoes. You just need a method that keeps the tubers warm, has high humidity, and is dark. If it was a hot and sunny day outside, I would just lay these sweet potato tubers out in a shady spot on some old towels in my garden. If rain was expected, I would have to collect these and bring them indoors because you do not want these to get wet while they're curing. But like I mentioned earlier, it is currently January as I'm filming this video and harvesting these tubers, and it is not good outside for curing. The temperatures are definitely much cooler than what is ideal for curing sweet potatoes. So I'm gonna have to do this indoors, and there's so many different ways that you can do this. I'll just show you what I think is the easiest and what I do at home. You're gonna need a couple heat mats. This will help keep your container nice and warm, and it also helps develop humidity, so that way we can cure our sweet potatoes in here. And you can use any kind of a plastic container. This is one of those plastic storage totes. I don't know the exact size of this one, but you want something that will fit relatively nicely over one heat mat. Put your container right over it, and then you're gonna lay your sweet potatoes in here in one single layer. You don't want to stack a whole bunch of them on top of each other because that traps pathogens and extra moisture and stuff like that, so then they won't dry out as nicely and store very long. To keep things a little bit humid in here, I like to get a couple, paper towels, moisten them up with some water, ball it up, and throw it in there, and that's usually more than enough to keep the entire environment in here nice and humid. I put the lid on top and keep it dark for 2 to 3 weeks. Ideally, you want to cure them at 85 degrees Fahrenheit with 90 to 95% humidity for the first week. Then for the second and third weeks, the temperature should be reduced down to 65 degrees Fahrenheit and the humidity down to about 80-ish. I don't monitor exactly what temperature and relative humidity these things are in. You most definitely can if you want to be very precise about it. I like keeping things simple, so I just prop open the lid starting on week 2 to reduce the temperature and humidity just a little bit. If you have a preferred method for curing sweet potatoes, please comment below and share your knowledge. I learned just as much from you guys as you do from me. After 3 weeks of curing, remove the tubers, still do not wash them, and store them in a dry, cool, dark place in one single layer. Unwashed and properly cured sweet potatoes can store for many months. All right, so what do you guys think about this harvest? Not bad for just a couple grow bags. And they didn't take up too much space in my garden either. These tubers are massive, and I can't wait to start eating them at 3 weeks once they're done curing. And I will be doing a tutorial showing how to plant sweet potato slips later in the spring when I plant the same slips that I'm cutting today, so more to come. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please subscribe and give me a big thumbs up. That helps out my channel more than you know. Happy gardening, and I'll see you in the next video.